For the synesthete, relationships between sensory channels create an experience of reality that for others may be reminiscent of altered states, such as those associated with psychedelic drugs like LSD. If each of the notes you're hearing right now also triggers a specific consistent color, you have chromesthesia, which for some people can also be associated with ordinary non-musical sounds too. Pythagoras penned the first known description of synesthesia in about 500 BCE, and today scientists believe it has a genetic basis that therefore runs in families and has existed throughout human history. Novelist Vladimir Nabokov experienced letters of the alphabet with different hues. Composer and musician Duke Ellington saw notes as colors, and there have been many other famous synesthetes like painter David Hockney, the musician Lord, and inventor Nikola Tesla. Incidentally, synesthesia is found to be 7 times more prevalent in creatives, including writers, artists, and musicians. There's a fascinating reason for this, which we will get to soon. But back to Professor Ramachandran. Sometimes referred to as the Sherlock Holmes of neurology, he runs 2 research labs, one working on behavioral neurology and cognitive neuroscience, and the other working on the neurology of human visual perception. When doctors from around the world cannot make sense of their brain-injured patients, they often refer them to him. His case histories, as reported in his books The Telltale Brain and Phantoms in the Brain, and in a video documentary made about the latter book, as well as his TED Talks, online lectures, and interviews, were my first exposure to him, especially to his fascinating insights into both Capgras delusion, in which someone believes that close personal relations have been replaced with imposters, and temporal lobe epilepsy, a strong candidate for biologically explaining certain types of very intense religious experiences. In the latter condition, seizures in the temporal lobe may occur without the physically visible motor symptoms most of us associate with epilepsy, but the powerful surges of electrical impulses that define the seizure can bounce back and forth internally between sensory and emotional centers, creating an overwhelmingly intense experience of sounds, colors, shapes, and textures, again, much like a psychedelic trip. This super heightened sensory quality then combines with the powerful implication of emotional meaning or importance. Imagine everyday reality as like a simple song with straightforward lyrics played on an acoustic guitar, and the temporal lobe seizure state as then perhaps being like reality suddenly coming at you like an electric guitar with the amplifier cranked up all the way, overlaid with a virtuoso singer constructing elaborate poetic imagery, dripping with a universal and profound emotional significance. For some people with this condition, the only possible interpretation they can find for their seizure experiences is that an all-powerful intelligence must be communicating with them directly. Geschwin's syndrome is a variant of temporal lobe epilepsy that usually combines the symptoms of hypergraphia, which is the urge to write voluminously, hyperreligiosity, atypical sexuality, usually reduced sexual drive, or finding a reduction in finding sex appealing, circumstantiality, which is a tendency toward drifting away from the topic of conversation only to eventually come back around, and an intensified mental life. These sound to me like fairly good general descriptions of the old world prophets who wrote the books upon which our main religions are based. Like, God is talking to me very intensely. I feel compelled to write and write and write about it. And part of my hyper-religiosity is a lack of interest in sex, or even finding sexuality at odds with the sacred.